I couldn't love more that we now have a mysterious character named Anud. Hello my beautiful geekies, welcome to the third review and analysis of Westworld Episode 3, The Stray. Let's start with Jeffrey Wright, who starts the episode and nearly ends it. He's now talking to Dolores once more, asking her if she thinks she's changed, if she thinks she has evolved again somehow, and he asks her to have a normal conversation with her, meaning he wants her to improv. He doesn't want any pre-created responses, and he gives her a copy of Alice in Wonderland, a new book for her to read, and she reads a passage from it, and the dialogue they have together really reminds you of a kid talking to their parents. How they're always asking, did I do something wrong? What do you want me to do better? What should I do for you to like me more? How should I act? And then she reads that passage of the world being so weird. And then later at the episode, once they encounter again on that little room, she has a conversation about how she has not two versions of herself. She only has one. And I find that very interesting because when she asks Jeffrey Wright about his son, his response is very calm, very subdued, and very different from what we saw last week. And there are moments when she acts like a child and she says childlike things that he smiles. He gives this slight sad smile, and it shows you that this man is very tortured. They show you later in the episode that his son died, maybe in his sleep, from what we can understand through the flashbacks. They are very quick as he's talking to his wife, who is played by Gina Torres from Firefly. And so Jeffrey Wright is a guy who sees these hosts as children. And that's why I think he has these little conversations with Dolores, because she's a very ambiguous character on herself inside of Westworld. Because as we find out in this episode, she's a crux between the hosts and the guests. She's a way for the hosts to get involved with the guests, and she's just, let's call it, a plot device inside the Westworld story. Not in the show itself, but on the park. And I find that very interesting because in this episode, Dolores evolves very much. I don't know what it is. I don't yet understand what is going on, but we can speculate because the gun appears and disappears at her will. She goes through her drawer in the morning, she finds the gun, she's shocked at first, she tries to remember things. We can see flashes of what happened before in the previous episodes. Then later in the episode, as we see that repeated scene from what we saw before with Ed Harris, as he says, let's get acquainted, Dolores, start from the beginning. And she's about to get raped by that porn star player, son of a bitch. She finds the gun in the haystack and she shoots the guy. And then as she goes and tries to save her father, we hear her say mama. I thought she didn't have a mama. Let me know if I am wrong, but I believe she didn't have a mama. But as she gets shot, she then starts repeating the scene all over again and she runs away, going to find our boys William and Ben Barnes, who I can't remember the name of, in the wilderness as they are after a bounty. One I think is the same that James Marsden is after. And now let's transition into him, because in this episode we see that he's also very ambiguous in the sense that he is not a host like others are. He starts the episode very badass, like he now has a partner who looks also very badass, and I don't know if she's a guest or a host. From what we see in this episode, I would be inclined to think she's a guest, but there's no clue to either of the options. He goes into the saloon, we see him having his classical scene with Dolores, but he has a quick scene with Fanny Newton and he gives her money for her troubles because he killed a guy in front of her saloon, and she has this quick flash of seeing him in a previous episode as she was trying to escape, seeing him dead inside that chamber, being cleaned up with the rest of the bodies. I love that quick flash, and I actually love that we didn't get any other scene with her remembering all those things in this one. I want that to digest. I want that be slowly, very slowly developed. But continuing with James Marsden, he goes after a bounty. But before going, he has this conversation with Dolores, and he has this thing about someday going away with her, because first he has to pay for his mysterious backstory. There's something dark lingering inside him, haunting him from the past, and that is his former commander from the war, Wyatt. That's how he's known in this episode. And you just look at this guy, he had a big massacre caused. He said that he heard the voice of God in his head, or the devil maybe, and that is something we'll return to later in this review. But Teddy now has to pay for his dark past. He feels guilty for what Wyatt did, and he has to capture him. And so he goes and he says to Dolores. Then we have a little repetition of their meeting, but this time Teddy's trying to teach Dolores how to shoot, and she can't. She tries to press the trigger, but she cannot. And then Teddy gets called up by the sheriff. They have found Wyatt. He's running wild, and Teddy says once again, someday I will return. And this time we have Dolores giving him this look, or not giving him, but just looking away paralyzed, because in the scene before when he says someday, she asks, well, someday I feel like it's something people say when they mean actually never. I like this evolution, this slow evolution progression of the Dolores character. Again, being a crux between guest and host, and now she's with two guests, so let's see what happens in the next episode. I like James Marsden in this one. He goes after Wyatt, they start a shootout, and then he sticks out in the wilderness until night with his partner, this girl who looks badass. And then we see that it's not Wyatt, but those native looking kind of guys that we saw last episode with Andy Newton's backstory, and they just massacre the hell out of James Marsden. We'll see what happens from there. We'll see if his partner got captured. There's a little speculation to what their meaning is, because in this episode, apart from the quick flashback to Dolores, we don't see Ed Harris at all, but I think this episode did that very well in that it focused on, personally, my other favorite character right now, Jeffrey Wright, who seems to be wanting to make things right, but it's now too late for that, because we see his scenes with Anthony Hopkins. And I love the scene where this guy is taking care of a host and he's covered them up with a towel, and Anthony Hopkins, in a very quiet, subdued way, basically reprimands him and then cuts the face of this host. And then they have this quick conversation, Jeffrey Wright and Anthony Hopkins, about how he created Westworld, about how he had a partner, and we see this flashback with young Anthony Hopkins, and I swear to God, I stopped this episode. I wanted to look at this shot, analyze it, and I was like, holy crap, that looks good! And I mean, Michael Douglas in Ant-Man, the young version, good. The fact that we can get this good special effects on television, the Benjamin Button effect, this is a great world we're living in, folks. And this whole conversation is happening because they have a stray going on out there, and Luke Hemsworth and the girl from Raising Hope are out there searching for him, and they have this conversation about this guy, the stray, having mentioned an Arnold. And Arnold was Anthony Hopkins' partner. Anthony Hopkins says that he's dead. I don't think so. Anthony Hopkins says that the guy wanted to create life. He didn't want to create hosts. He wanted to create sentient life with memories and improv and a very human conscious. And he couldn't, so he just gave up and he died in Westworld. This is my question. Is this Arnold? Is this an Arnold who's gone crazy inside of Westworld that he doesn't recognize that he wasn't born there? Just like he said last week. And now Anthony Hopkins says that his friend died, his friend is not around anymore because this is such a different person. This is a very interesting plot that I think was very accurately inserted just right now as Dolores has gone through a major shift. We're now going to quickly talk about the least interesting part in this episode, at least for me, but it's not without its interesting aspects. And we have the Raising Hope girl with Luke Hemsworth going through the park searching for the stray, and they find this camp. They talk about how they program these robots, how they have limited functions for each of them, and they go through a tent, and the stray guy draws constellations, or what look like constellations, in wooden figures. And he has this simple spherical figure. It has the Orion constellation. Orion constellation is supposed to guide you in a certain way. But that not only looks like a constellation, it looks like the map we saw in the scalp of the other guy that Ed Harris's character killed in the first episode. So right now, things are shifting apart. but things are also coming together little by little. I think this episode was very well directed by Neil Marshall, who directed some of the best episodes from Game of Thrones. There are so many questions we gotta ask right now. Who are those native-looking guys who last week were replaced by Ed Harris's and Thandie Newton's flashback? Who are they now killing James Marsden? Where is James Marsden going to go right now? How is Dolores' character shift going to affect these two guys that she meets by the end of the episode? Where is Ed Harris right now? Is he the Arnold? We gotta ask ourselves that. That is one of the most interesting aspects right now. Did Arnold die, or did Arnold die in the real world and we have a new character that doesn't have a name and he's just called the Man in Black? What is Jeffrey Wright really trying to do to these robots? How does he see them as their children? Does he want to educate them? Does he want them to survive no matter the cost? Does he want to change what is going on in Westworld? These are all my questions for myself, but you guys can also give your guesses to this review and analysis that I love making for you guys so much. And of course, let me know what you thought of this episode of Westworld. Do you think it's the best one? Do you think it's the worst one? Your theories, your speculation for the next episode. What is really going on in this world, guys? Let me know. And also let me know your questions for the Doctor Strange Q&A. You can ask me about anything you want, and you can ask me how many questions you want. Just leave the hashtag Doctor Strange Q&A. There will be a giveaway, and you might win something. And stalk me on the internet through my Facebook, Instagram, and my vlog channel. Those links are all in the description below. And if you enjoyed this review and analysis, and this is your first one, I have 2 previous ones. I'll leave a link to the playlist also in the description. If you are not a part of the beautiful geeky community, click the subscribe button and join us so we can be geeky united. Thank you so much for watching, guys. You are the best. I love you so much. Stay beautiful, stay geeky. Shit.